All right, here we go with our big Week 13 Tigers and Tide broadcast. I am Brett Mason, your resident at Barner. My buddy Jamie Thomas, the world's #1 Bammer, is with me. How are you, man? War Eagle.
Roll Tide, brother. How you doing?
We've been putting this podcast off for a while because I ain't wanted to talk about it, but here we go. We're getting right into it.
Hey,
Whatever.
are you finally out of your state of depression?
You know what's weird is this is really strange, but I've been down on Auburn. I mean, I've talked them up like a fan, but you've had talks with me when the camera wasn't rolling. You know how I felt about Auburn. I wasn't shocked by that at all. I was shocked we couldn't put but 7 points on them. That shocked me.
All right.
I wasn't shocked that we've lost. How suddenly Auburn suddenly can't score more than 7 points was weird to me, which leads me to believe that they were in a funk that day or something. Because lose big. I predicted them to lose big. I predicted them to lose by 2 scores, I think. So I predicted the loss, but how do you not score?
I don't know. It's like you said, they were in a funk. I think there's some things going on behind the scenes up there. It's it's going to be interesting to see, the rest of this year and next year how Gus Malzahn kind of retakes control of that program. It seems like this year he's kind of lost the faith of his players a little bit on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball. They're just not playing as a team. It seems like what we saw from Auburn last year, that the camaraderie, the believe in each other attitude. I just don't see that when I look at Auburn on the field this year.
Well, I have a theory about that, and I think it started with Jermaine Whitehead. He was the leader on defense, and we still don't know what happened there. I don't know. Did he punch a coach? Did he push a coach? Did he cuss a coach out? It was something, though. I mean, all the rumors, you hear that many of them, it must be something to that. But I think that led to there being some divisions in the defense. I think some players probably sided with him.
Right.
And there's probably some other ones sided with the coaching staff. And I mean, that's the only thing I can figure, because we talked about this halfway through the season. Auburn's defense was getting better. And I was like, yes, finally. The defense is not – and we had some substitutions due to injuries and stuff, and we're still making do. And then all of a sudden the bottom fell out. And every week the defense got worse. And you'll see them. I'll tell you what's weird. They can't penetrate. They can't pressure a quarterback. But what's weird is when they did shoot a gap or get a line on a guy in the backfield or something, and you'd be like, yes, way to bust through. They couldn't tackle him. So you'd see them shoot through, and the guy would run by him like they were standing still. So it got to the point that I was like, please don't penetrate the line, because you're going to be behind the guy, and you can't tackle him. So he's going to run for 20 yards. You just got scared to see him do anything. And that, to me, is they either not focused. Surely to God, most of them boys been there long enough not to tackle. So, I mean, maybe you have different insight on it, not being an Auburn fan, but I think we probably feel about the same way. I don't know, something weird going on there, but they need to shake up something.
Spend much time on the Auburn message boards, which I don't frequent them very often. As I said before, unfortunately, some of the folks I work with are Auburn fans, and I get to hear all about Auburn all the time. So
that's the highlight of your day. Come on, admit it.
Highlight of my day, man. Highlight of my day. But there's all kinds of theories going around the message boards about what happened with Whitehead, what happened with Coach Johnson, and I guess the rift between the coaching staff and the players up there. But you can't. All that stuff is hearsay. Most of these so-called experts that are on these message boards, they're no more of an expert about Auburn football than I am.
Yeah, and then I tell you the other interesting thing. Right after me and you praised Malzahn on a podcast about how even though he let Whitehead back, he still wasn't playing on defense.
Right.
And then what do? They drag him in. So I mean, they knew things were going to hell.
Yeah.
And then when Malzahn says, "Screw it, we got to play the guy,"
things are bad.
Yeah. And so I'll tell you, and we'll just jump into it now because let's talk about Alabama first, and then we'll jump into looking to head to our cupcake games this weekend. Alabama ranked #1. I think everybody pretty much predicted it. That's an SEC fan.
Yeah.
People that are fans of other conferences probably are like, there's no way they're going to be #1, man. I'm not so sure they should be #1. That's definitely past due them being in the top 4, though. I mean, they're definitely one of the 4 best teams in the country, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't. Mississippi State, not taking anything away from the Bulldogs. They'd made it this far undefeated in the toughest division and the toughest conference of all of college football. But let's face it, Mississippi State is not a great football team, and they've proven that. Over the last couple of weeks, they've been struggling. It's been the Dak Prescott show this entire year, and Prescott, statistically had a really good game against Alabama throwing the football. What messed him up were the turnovers.
Yeah.
I
Three
think
interceptions, right? Yeah.
yeah, well, I think I saw a stat. The first 6 games of the year, he threw 2 interceptions, and then in the last 3, he's thrown 7 or 8 total. So he's been rattled the last part of this year, and unfortunately for Mississippi State, it's been live and die with Dak Prescott. Are they a good football team? Absolutely. Were they deserving of the #1 ranking? I don't think so. And I'll say that about Bama. Bama's a pretty good football team, but they're not the dominant football team we've seen in the past. Yeah, the defense seems to be getting better. They seem to be playing better football right now. They're starting to swarm to the football. You're starting to see that traditional Alabama game tackling, the ball hawkers like Landon Collins. But offensively, we've got one true weapon, one guy that's a threat every time he touches the football, and that's Amari Cooper. And then you got some really good football players that are playing just above average right now in T.J. Yeldon and Derrick Henry, and really the rest of the wide receiver core. You look at the last 2 games Bama's played. LSU, they didn't do anything offensively until the last drive, and really against Mississippi State, had it not been for the turnovers, I'm not sure if we could have put very many points on the board against them. I mean, it's just I just don't see a #1 team in Alabama right now. On the same note,
Yeah, well, on the same note,
they're really about average with the top of the rest of the conferences. I mean, they're as good as Florida State, they're as good as Oregon, they're as good as TCU. TCU's a good football team. They're as good as Baylor, but I think under the right circumstances, any of those 4 teams, could beat Alabama.
well, no, let's just come out and say it, because this started dawning on me week before last, and then this past week it really hit me. Let's just come out and say it. College football is down this year.
It is. It really is. There's not a dominant team in college football.
When I say who would be #1, I don't have a problem with Bama being there. I don't think they're the best team, but then when I try to figure out who is, I don't know. Holy hell, is FSU the best team? Well, no, they're undefeated. Look, I think you got to give a team props for being undefeated, even when they play crap competition to some degree. So if Bama were dominant, yeah, let's pass up the no loss, FSU or whatever. But Bama's been hit and miss. We talked about this before the cameras started rolling. The Bama fans have thrown A&M up in our face about how bad you guys beat them and then we lost to them. But to me, the same thing applies to the LSU. I mean, and it was a little bit different team. But then when you see Arkansas come back and beat them like they did, and Bama could hardly score on them. That's weird to me.
That's just a lot of. And you hate to say it, that's ignorant college football fans. I mean, it really is. I mean, when you can't take, situations like that and determine who the better team is, because really, in the SEC West, even a down team like LSU or even a down team like Texas A&M is good enough and talented enough that any week they're going to step on the field and they're going to challenge whoever they're playing. You can't look at it that way. And I know Bama fans like to give Auburn fans a hard time, and Auburn fans like to give Bama fans a hard time. If you don't believe that, take a look at the comments that are on our Facebook page. I mean, these folks are ruthless, man. But you can't base something upon that, because really, the Bama-Texas A&M game, Bama came out, they could have beat anybody that day. They could have beat the 72 Dolphins. I don't
know about that. They were on fire that day, no doubt. They were on fire.
They were on fire. But had that game been played a week later, and maybe Bama, was, Blake Sims wasn't as pumped up. Lane Kiffin wasn't in the, the offensive genius mindset that he was in against Texas A&M. That's a game Texas A&M easily could have beaten, coming to Tuscaloosa and beating Alabama.
I think you go all the way back to the beginning of the season, all the way back, and A&M comes out and blows out Gamecocks, opening game of the season. that kind of has set the tone for the whole year now, because you've had teams who will win and look dominant, then they'll come back and lose unexpectedly, then they'll look mediocre against the game and it's like there's no consistency. Alabama hasn't dominated all year, but there's been games where they have dominated. I don't think
there have been games.
I don't think there's been more than 2 though, maybe 3, but I mean real competition. Now I'm not talking about the out of conference though. I don't count that. Auburn obviously has melted down at the end of the year, but even on their best games, they had weaknesses, and on their worst games, they were exposed. Who else you're talking about? Mississippi State, like you said. Mississippi State reminds me so much of the 2010 Auburn team. They got one really good guy. They're marginal in a lot of other places. They have people that step up and make plays, and they've had a favorable schedule. It's almost identical, which anytime you have a national championship team, they're going to have a favorable schedule. So you can't hold that against them. Nobody has a.
You look at State. I mean, State was, a favorable call or 2 away from losing to Auburn this year. I mean, that's a game. Auburn probably should have won. They should have knocked off Mississippi State. There were some questionable calls in that game. So I mean, it's like you said, the problem with the West this year, or the problem with the SEC, and it's a problem across college football. Like you said, there's no one dominant team, but they're all above average and trying to get to almost to that point of dominance. But they're just they're cannibalizing from within. Yeah. It's just all it's crazy. I've never seen as much parity in this conference as we've seen this year.
Well, with that being said, let's we got the top 4. The way it sits right now, God help us all. If nothing changes, if Alabama wins out, Mississippi State wins out, if all the teams win out, I assume the Final Four will look like they look now. And I think all 4 teams win out, with the exception of Mississippi State, who may have some issues in the Egg Bowl.
Right.
But we would see Alabama, Mississippi State Part 2. I don't want to see that. I don't have any desire to see that.
I don't know. I think with the human factor this year, the committee. As long as TCU wins out and they do so in a dominant fashion, which I think they will. I don't think they have anybody left on their schedule but Texas, and granted Texas has been playing pretty good football lately. They've beaten some what is considered pretty decent Big 12 football teams in their last 3 football games. But I really see TCU dominating that football game, beating Texas, and I think if Mississippi State struggles even just a little bit against Ole Miss, whether they win or not, I think we're going to see TCU jump ahead of Mississippi State in those rankings.
Yeah, and I'm torn on that because I want the playoffs to be good. I want the first year to be good. I want it to be competitive, and I want when we get through watching those first rounds, I want us to go, God, that was some good football, and that was awesome. It's kind of torn. I mean, having 2 SEC teams in there would be great, man, because I'm an SEC fan, but I don't want to see Alabama and Mississippi State again. Ohio State, I wish there was some way they could get in there. I don't see how they – I think they're a pretty good team, but –
I mean, I think they're on the rise, but I don't think anybody really from the Big Ten is playoff worthy this year.
See, I think the problem we're going to run into, and you have this whole SEC fatigue, SEC hating thing. If you have 2 teams in there, one of them's going to lose, which everybody's going to use against the SEC. When the reverse should be true, it should be a case for the SEC. We had 2 teams in there. I think if we could get some diversity and have SEC teams and then we beat up on some of those other crappy conferences, I think it would look better for us, just to be honest about it. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Let's talk about this week, man. I tell you, I run the numbers. People jump on my case about running my stats, but I've only been really wrong about 1 game this year. I've been a little bit wrong about 1, and then I've nailed the other ones. I've nailed several blowouts people didn't expect. I nailed Georgia was going to take it to Alabama or to Auburn. I thought Auburn would score more, but man, the numbers said otherwise. And I tell you, this year has really been for Alabama and Auburn. This has really been a home-away thing for both teams. They're at home. They generally, except for Auburn screwing up against A&M, generally they do really well at home. They're questionable away. So you can pretty much take a decent team and say they're going to give them a run for their money on the road. And I don't recall a year where it's been that dramatic for either of those teams. But this year, man, it's been we're a home team, and don't mess with us at home. But God knows what's going to happen when we're on the road.
Right. Well, Bama's got a fifth-year quarterback that has freshman experience, and I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of the problems on the road. I think he struggles a little bit. Well, I mean, we've seen it. He does struggle a little bit. The stats don't lie. He's only completing 50% of his passes on the road, where at home he's completing almost 70% of his passes. I mean, it's just it takes time to prepare for that. Those type of environments, especially when you go down to Death Valley and you're playing against LSU, or you go to Fayetteville and you're playing against a team like Arkansas, or even up to Knoxville when they're not still not having a great year, but you got over 100,000 plus wearing orange. I mean that's a tough environment, and Sims has held his composure in a couple of those games. He's had some good late drives to to win the ball games, but he is definitely a home quarterback. And with the last 2 games of the year being at home, I've got a lot of confidence in what Bama can do.
Well, let's talk about my stats, and we'll talk about the games coming up. I don't know if you saw my stat video I threw up, but Alabama should have no problem with Western Carolina. But I'll tell you, these 2 teams we're playing this week, they're in a different division, obviously, so the talent level's down. You expect to beat them handily. But for the divisions that they play in, these aren't ball. Obviously, it shouldn't be a challenge for either team. I think Auburn's probably the most suspect. But I got that Auburn game just based on stats. Now, keep in mind, again, the stats don't take into account the 2 different divisions. So it's 2 completely different talent levels. But were they on par talent-wise, it would be a close game, 3-point game. I got it. This Samford team is no slouch. And that West Carolina team for Division A, and they play pretty well, too. I think they could be real games for a little while.
Yeah.
Not all 4 quarters, but they could be real games for a little while.
Well, I think the challenge for both teams, Bama's coming off of a big win. The possibility of looking ahead to Auburn and the Iron Bowl is there. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen.
They are. They've been scheming. They've been scheming, man. Come on, they've been scheming all week.
They are. Well, Nick Saban said it in his press conference. This is one of those games where you're not trying to figure out how to win the game. You're trying to figure out how to get better, and that's what both Alabama and Auburn have to do. They have to forget. Bama's got to forget about the win to Mississippi State. Auburn's got to get over the hangover of the loss they had in Athens. They've both got to not look ahead to the Iron Bowl. Auburn has to take this opportunity to work on the areas they need the most improvement on, and that is, of course, defense. If I was the defensive coordinator for Auburn, it would be tackling drills all week long. And Alabama, the same. They've got to work on their momentum, getting up to the line of scrimmage. We're still seeing Blake Sims struggling calling the plays. We're still seeing him having trouble with time management. If either one of them gets caught looking ahead to the Iron Bowl this week, or not recovering from the hangover from the loss, or even the excitement of the win from this past weekend, you're right. I mean, it could be a lot closer than what we would hope for it to be going into the 4th quarter.
Well, and the last thing you want in a game like this for either team is for them to be in that frame of mind and it be close for 2 quarters, or God forbid it's close for 3 quarters. And you have to keep your starters out there, and one of them winds up getting hurt or something stupid like that. I mean, they're, in a perfect world, you want those guys out in the 3rd quarter. So, you got your superstars playing half a game. They get their accolades. They put up some big numbers, and you don't want them still struggling in the 4th quarter. You don't want to say we got to put up another touchdown. I don't think that'll happen with Alabama. Definitely Auburn. God, who only knows, man. Auburn misses a few tackles, blows a few coverages and stuff, and lets Samford get up on his 2 scores. Who knows what could happen, man? I would think that we could match them score for score, but that's what Auburn's had to do all year. You score, we got to score, because we ain't gonna hold you. So that's a lot to ask of an offense, man. When you expect your offense to have to score every possession, Jesus, that's a lot of pressure. So that can get to them. So let's move ahead and talk about the Iron Bowl, man. Alabama, because of the way it went down last year, the way that win happened, they don't just want to win, man. They want it to be ugly. They want it to be bad. They're going to have us over there at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's going to be a lot of beer flowing, a lot of crazy people.
They should cut off alcohol sales on Thursday.
That game scares me, man. It scares me in the fact that I think if Auburn has some issues on defense and Alabama can score a little bit to where it can get where Auburn gets disheartened on defense a little bit, it's their last game. They know they got nothing left. They give up, and you know, I don't want to lose to Alabama, but I don't want to lose by 21. Worse than I don't want to lose. I want to lose by 3 if we're gonna lose, or lose by 7.
I've heard some Auburn fans say, "Oh man, Alabama, the #1 team in the country, they're going to kill us this year." But these teams, this is still going to be a good Iron Bowl. It's still going to be a good Iron Bowl because really, when you look at it and you look at the history, this year's the games that have already been played, these teams really aren't that far apart. What Bama fans are failing to realize is really we're a couple of plays away from being a 2 or 3 loss teams ourselves. Auburn is a couple of plays away, other than the Georgia game. We'll just say they're a couple of plays away from being, a 1 or 2 loss team or a 1 loss team. I mean, this is still going to be a very good Iron Bowl. I mean, there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of everything that goes into this football game, and I'm sure the guys that come in from out of state, not as much as the in-state guys, but there's several folks on both teams that have this circled on their calendar, and this is the one game they actually look forward to, to playing in. This is what they've dreamed about growing up. So I mean, you've got to take all of that. You got to take that emotion into a factor because we've seen it. The first year Bama won the championship, they had to come from behind to beat Auburn. Next year when Auburn won the championship, they had to come from behind to beat Bama. I mean, it's just so much can happen in this ball game, and my money, if I was a betting man, I would take the underdog in the game.
I think that's a pretty safe bet, and I generally do. If I bet on the game, depends on how I feel about Auburn's, whether I bet or not, because you got some bad mojo happen there. But I would agree with you on that. And people talk about throwing the stats out and everything for the Iron Bowl. That isn't true when one of the teams is really bad, because it just doesn't happen. But if both teams have talent and both teams have some skill players and they have the ability to be a decent team, then you really can throw the stats out to a certain degree. You were talking about how close some games were. If Auburn hadn't spotted 2 different teams 14 or 21 points in the first few minutes of a game, so you're digging out of a 14 or 21 point deficit for the first 2 quarters, those games have been completely different. They did it. You can't. I never liked when there's certain Bama fans that will never admit they got beat. They always talk about we beat ourselves. I've seen some Auburn fans doing that this year, going, "We beat ourselves. They didn't beat us." No, we were the ones on the field, and we got beat. It doesn't matter how it happened. You just got beat. If you make a mental error, that's getting beat. That isn't you beating yourself. That means you got beat. So, they got beat, but it's just weird how it played out. So I hope it's a close game. I hope it lives up to the billing because I'm one of those folks that even if Auburn is undefeated, I still want the Iron Bowl to be good. And even if Auburn doesn't have a shot at anything else, and of course Alabama's making a run, I still want the Iron Bowl to be good, man. That's what I live for all season. You live for it all season, then it's over with, and it sucks for a year. So
right, yeah.
You want to be on the edge of your seat in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left. That's a good Iron Bowl, man.
It's one of those games you want to DVR it and you want to watch it 52 times before the next one. I mean, you really do. It's one of those games you want to watch every week. And last year's I didn't care for too much. The year before that, I think that was the blowout year.
Yeah, it was horrible.
But really, over the last several years, there have been some really good games. In fact, going back to the year before, Bama's first championship year, and then the year Auburn won the national championship with Cam, and then even last year to the oh man, it hurts my head to even think about that game last year.
Hey, the good news is, buddy, is you don't see a lot of people playing kick six videos anymore.
Yes,
Auburn fans have calmed down.
Leading up to the Iron Bowl, the kick six videos will be all over. But even that game, you had to be. God, man, it hurt. I still hurt over that football game. That was really one of the greatest moments in college football history. It really was.
Dude,
Whether
as
you're an
much as I
Alabama
love to
fan,
rub that in your face, I will rub that in your face because you're a freaking Alabama fan. But
that's
dude,
right.
I can't imagine losing like that. I can't imagine that. It's
It
like
was tough, man.
when the least possible thing you could ever imagine happens, and it happens, and you're sitting there
Yeah.
going, "What the hell did that really just happen?"
Those weren't exactly the words I used, but yeah, that was. I had to go for a walk. Had to calm down. The wife threatened to kick me out of the house for a week until I recovered. Uh, the dogs hated me. I mean, I was not a pleasant person. I laid out of work for 2 weeks. I mean, it's just, man, it
All
was
right, so I
tough.
got
It
I
was
got a
tough.
couple tough questions for you because we've done skipped over this weekend. We're straight to the Iron Bowl talk. Couple of tough questions for you. What do you think the percentage is? What percentage do you think that we will have a good Iron Bowl? In other words, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever left in fourth quarter, it's still a game. 50%, 60, 70, 20, 30. What's the percentage you think we got a good Iron Bowl?
80%.
80% chance it's good.
Yeah.
I'd go with that. I'd go at least 70. I think it's 70% chance. If it was in, if it was, of course, if it was in Jordan Hare, I'd feel a little bit better about it. But hopefully the boys will get up for the game.
I think you've always got, unless it's a situation like with Chiswick a couple of years ago where, there, he just lost control of the team for the most part. There was no faith left in the coaching staff. There was no faith by the coaching staff and the players. Unless you have a situation like that, I think you always have at least a 50% chance that it's going to be a good Iron Bowl. And there have been some great ones over the years. I mean, you've had, years going back into what I can remember, the 80s, there were some really good ball games. The 90s, there were some really good ball games. And, very few mixed in between where it was actually not, a good football game. There have been a couple, a blowout here, a blowout there for both teams. But I think, every year, there's at least a 50% chance that it's going to be a nail biter until the end.
All right, my other Iron Bowl related question. This week I've had on the Facebook page. One of them was a husband-wife team. I banned the husband. His wife got upset. I had to ban her. What do you think the over/under is on how many people I ban on Iron Bowl week from the Facebook page?
I'm gonna go 200.
Look,
It's gonna be rough,
I try
man.
to let it run wild because that's what's good about it, man. I let them post crazy pictures and get nuts on there. And I let a lot of stuff go, but you get to a point sometimes where I'm like, look, that's just too much, man. You got to go.
Let me give our Facebook users a couple pieces of advice. Number one, if you're going to rant and rave about class, every other word that you type should not begin with the letter F and end with the word K. Okay?
Nothing's more amusing to me than football fans throwing the word class around. Come on, man.
If you're going to talk about how stupid the other team or the fans of the other team are, learn how to spell, please.
Your browser will spell check for you. It's an amazing thing.
Absolutely. So, if you're going to talk about class, no F bombs. If you're going to talk about how stupid somebody else is, learn how to spell. It's that simple, guys. Come on, make the state look better than what you're doing so far.
All right, my last Iron Bowl related question. If the Iron Bowl rolls around and Auburn beats Alabama, is Alabama still in the top four?
No.
No?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No way a two-loss teams. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There's too many quality one-loss teams out there right now. If that happens, you could see a situation where the Big 12 could get two teams in, because then you're looking at Florida State, Oregon, and then you got TCU and Baylor that are still one-loss teams. I don't think Baylor's going to lose to whoever it is they're playing this weekend or next weekend.
I'm pulling for Baylor, man. I think Baylor's been done wrong. I'll just be honest with you. I'm pulling for Baylor.
Yeah, they beat TCU and they kind of got the hose, but I don't think there's any way with that many one-loss teams that a two-loss SEC team is going to get in. With that being said, I think had it been a situation where Auburn beat Georgia, Auburn won out. They beat Alabama, and then Ole Miss wound up beating Mississippi State. Auburn won the tiebreaker. They went to the SEC championship and beat Georgia or whoever. I think maybe a two-loss SEC champion could get in. I think maybe if Bama loses to Auburn, there's still a chance they could make the SEC championship somehow if Mississippi State loses again to Ole Miss. But that would be the only way if somehow that two-loss team makes it to the SEC championship and wins the SEC championship. But if Bama doesn't, loses to Auburn, doesn't play in the SEC championship, there's no way they're in the Final Four.
That'd be bizarre, man. That'd be bizarre if Mississippi State gets jumped and a weird Iron Bowl happens and Alabama's out and you have no SEC teams in the Final Four.
Yeah, if Auburn would like
the SEC haters would love that.
If Auburn would just like to go ahead and succeed to Alabama and let's just take all the guesswork out of it, we'll take it.
Look, I told you, man. I hope some miracle happens and gets the ugliest thing you've ever seen. I hope it's a beatdown in Tuscaloosa. But now, if Alabama wins, I'm on the Alabama train the rest of the year, man. I'm on the Alabama train in the championship game. I'm on the Alabama train in the playoffs. So you know how I am. But God, I hope it's real weird. I mean, I've found myself mellowing as an Auburn fan in my old age. I used to be. I don't give a crap what happens. I want Alabama to lose every game always. And so now I'm to the point that where it's really I enjoy watching Alabama play, which is kind of weird. And I just
let me ask you an Iron Bowl question then. Would you rather see Auburn win a good, close, hard-fought game, or would you rather see that beatdown that you're talking about?
No, I lied. I take it back. I'd rather be tight. I'd rather it be a slugfest. I'd like to see all the players with their hands on their hips in the fourth quarter gasping for air and knowing that somebody's got to get it to the 20 for a field goal shot or something.
No, we don't want this game ending in a field goal.
Well, I know who will win if that comes. I know that's all.
In fact, if our kicker doesn't even have to get dirt on his cleats, we will be happy. Okay, we do not want to see him on the field.
But no, the team has a chance to. It's a 6-point game, and the team has a chance to score, and they run through all 3 downs from the 1-yard line, and it comes down to 4th down, and you got one more shot, and you got to get it in. God, that'd be awesome. Yeah. No matter which team it was needing to do it. No, I want the game to be good, man, because you live off of that for a year. Because when the season goes away. It's lonely and cold and lonely for college football fans for a long time. So no, you want it to be good. You want something you can go back and watch the replay on a month later and go, man, I'm gonna watch that Iron Bowl replay, even if you lost it.
Or if it's something like the kick six, you can see it every 30 seconds on ESPN for 4 whole months.
Hey, I don't think this will happen because Saban teams don't really play like that. You don't see Saban teams in those situations too often. How weird would it be if Alabama won on some crazy last-second play and us Auburn fans have to watch that replay for the next 12 months?
Hey, it'd be fine with me.
All right, man. Good show, buddy. I'm pumped about the Iron Bowl. I'm hoping that Auburn can make it competitive. Hopefully they can get that team inspired. We talked about the problem. They didn't play physical. If you watch the Georgia game, and I watched the replay, they didn't play physical at all, man. They got manhandled. They didn't look like they were attacking. I think if they can get them inspired where they play hard again and maybe this be a scrimmage game against Samford and we win it pretty good, then maybe we'll have a good Iron Bowl. But either way, we're going to talk smack for the next 10 days one way or the other.
Absolutely. And let's be thinking about what we want our Iron Bowl bet to be.
I'm gonna message Phyllis and see if I can get her to do a podcast with us next week.
All right, hey, that'd be great.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome.
Do it too. I don't know if she can do video or not, but at least maybe we can get her on the phone and have her on the phone.
Yeah.
Something tells me Phyllis doesn't have Skype. I could be wrong, but I don't think she has Skype. Do you?
I would imagine that wall phones is about as close as she's gonna get. She's got Fine Bomb on speed dial.
A wall phone. All right, dude, I'm out, man. Good luck this weekend. We may do another one before the weekend, or we may not, but we're definitely gonna do several Iron Bowl week, 2 or 3, maybe something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We gotta pump it up. Gotta pump it up.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you again, War Eagle.
All right, roll tide, buddy.